tonight's program. This features Anna Marie Abell and her program, Holy Crap, I Wrote a Book, and how a trip to the library led to the discovery of a lifetime and the destruction of my brain. So here's what Anna tells us about her journey that led to this novel. I grew up in a trailer park, and her trailer was on wheels. So her parents moved the family around a vast array of mobile home parks in the Pacific Northwest. And somewhere along the way, she got totally into UFOs, likely hoping that extraterrestrials would come and abduct her. But they never did. And luckily for her, she was smart. And because her only hope of escaping trailer life was college, a full scholarship to Chapman University had her well on her way to her new life. 2 bachelor's degrees in film and television production and media performances, and several honors and awards for her accomplishments. She managed to start working in an almost completely unrelated industry from her majors, infomercials. In college, Anna was bitten by the ancient alien bug and has spent the last 20 years researching the ancient Sumerian culture, in particular their gods, the Anunnaki, and their connection to the creation of the human race. What she found changed her life, her beliefs, and her understanding of the universe and everything on it. Her humorous science fiction trilogy, The Anunnaki Chronicles, is a culmination of all of her studies, her borderline obsession with all things paranormal, and many bottles of wine. Anna was named one of the top 40 contemporary science fiction authors by a poll of the Book Riot readers. And Holy Crap, The World is Ending is an award-winning first book in that series. Let me let in a few more people here. Try Walter again. And so here are a few of the awards that she has received. The 30th IBPA Benjamin Franklin Award Silver Medal winner for Best Science Fiction and Fantasy, and the Bill Fisher Award for Best First Book Fiction. The 2019 San Diego Book Awards Geisel Award for the Best Published Book and Best Science Fiction Fantasy Novel, and Shelf Unbound Magazine 2018 Best Indie Book Notable Indie. And here are a few of the reviews. A rolling seat of your pants fun ride through the universe. Joan Silvestro, book trader of Hamilton. Anna Marie Abell has succeeded in weaving her years of study into the ancient Sumerian culture and their gods with common conspiracy theories, pop culture, and random human quirkiness into an out-of-this-world end times romp that will have you laughing out loud at the most inappropriate times, and possibly even shedding a tear or two before it's all said and done. Jennifer at Gently Reads. And finally, a smoothie of fabulousness that trickles as it goes down. Jill Elizabeth, all things Jill Elizabeth. And now I'm going to hand it over to Anna.
All right. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining me today. I'm so excited to share my story with y'all. All right. You should all see a nice trailer park right there. All right. So my journey began in a trailer park. And we're not talking the fancy trailer park like you see in California here with fancy mobile homes, all that kind of stuff. We're talking real trailer park. Wife beater shirts, and a definite must, the mullet. So yeah, I did have a mullet. That's me. See, the mullet actually came from my parents cut my hair short like a boy. And everybody would say, are you a boy or a girl? And I wanted my hair long. And so the compromise, thank goodness it was in style during that time, was a mullet. So I sported that mullet in that trailer park and rocked it. We were very poor, obviously living in a trailer park, lived on government cheese. Fun fact, this is what I thought nachos were till I was in middle school. I didn't know what a tortilla chip was. My nachos were those, oh, you remember those paper plates? If you're old like me, you know what paper plates those are. With Lay's potato chip, government cheese on top. You stick that in the microwave. It turns into plastic, and it is the best thing ever, right? That's what I thought nachos were. Eventually, things got a little better. My dad got his job back at Continental Airlines, and we were upgraded to a fancy trailer, a 40-footer. And I had my own room. My room is right there in the very back over the sewer pipe. That was pleasant too. So because we're a little richer, we upgraded to Velveeta cheese. That was so nice, so smooth and creamy. You put it in the microwave and it's a delight. Those are my parents. That's the only picture I had of inside the trailer. But one thing about living with your parents in a trailer, yeah. So to this day, if there's an earthquake or something shakes, I'm traumatized. Yeah, so that was my life. So I'm gonna talk about my first writing experience, my first diary entry. I found this lovely thing. So I started it obviously in 1988. I pulled out my diary. I'm gonna write this diary entry. Decided not to, scratched it out and tried it a year later when I was 13, 1989. So I'll read this lovely thing for you. This is my first entry. Nothing much happened today. I started my period, but it's not the first. I could talk on and on about what happened before I started writing in my diary, but I won't. The only thing I want to put down is that I saw a guy get run over a while back, and it was pretty interesting. Gotta go. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye. And as you can see, there was no talking to you tomorrow because I never wrote another entry. But that entry, full of intrigue, mystery, right? It really shows how talented I am. So, graduated high school. For five years, I was in the drama program. And no, I was not in high school for 5 years. I didn't flunk. I did get straight A's, but in 8th grade, we were allowed to take a high school class. And so I took drama. And so that's why I was in there for 5 years. And that was my love. That was it for me. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So my sights were set on Hollywood. I was going to become an actress. So I went to Chapman University, as was mentioned, and got almost a full ride scholarship there to study theater, which was fantastic. And I also double majored in film and television production. A couple things happened in college that completely kind of changed the course of my life. The first experience was in a screenwriting class. My project was a sitcom called Trailer Park Junkies. This was what I was writing about. And it was a sitcom about these two just low-life kind of guys who witnessed a crime, and they had to go in the witness protection program, but they pissed the FBI agents off so much that they got sent to a trailer park for their witness protection program. I thought it was just genius, right? You know, because I lived in a trailer, I could write about it. I know I had all these great stories. And so we had this opportunity to have the Michael Schiffer, who wrote Crimson Tide. He was going to come in, read all the synopsis of our stories, and give us feedback. I was like, wow, what an opportunity. The guy who wrote Crimson Tide, let's do this. So before that happened, the professor at the time gave us critiques. And so we sat down and all in a circle, and he kind of gave us critiques on our synopsis. And he looked at me, he's like, in front of everybody, I turned so beet red. He's like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. This would never sell. You should never write this. It's terrible. I mean, I left in tears. I was like, oh God, I don't ever want to write again. Of course, Michael Schiffer came in the next week to give us our critique, and I was so scared to go in that room. I was thinking, maybe I just won't show up, right? That might be the best solution. Just don't show up, lose my grade. So I get in there, and then he makes his introductions. And as soon as he's done with his introductions, he says, who wrote Trailer Park Junkies? Who is the person that wrote Trailer Park Junkies? I like melted in my seat. I'm like, I don't want to admit to it. He's going to tell me how crappy it is. And he says, this is the best synopsis I've ever written. I do not know why it's not in production right now. It is genius. I was like floored, right? So that was like just a turning point where you can kind of flip. It's like somebody hates it, somebody loves it. And so, of course, the next day, the professor was like, oh, okay, well, might have been a little wrong on that. Maybe you should pursue that. So that was an interesting point. It was a little turning point for me that I didn't realize at the time, where you have a familiar idea and something new. So problem with Trailer Park Junkies, why I didn't like it, is it was a dark comedy mixed with a broad comedy. So you have these dark undertones, this dark humor mixed with some like Joe Dirt type humor, right? And so it was a cross genre. And then what I didn't know then, but it would be my first lesson about the repercussions of stepping outside the box, hitting that cross genre. So we'll get to that, because I thought something new was going to be great. So in college, I hit a crossroads. It was the biggest crossroads in my life, and I still go back and think about it today. In the film and television production, side of what I did in the college, I was top student. I got award after award, Dean's Award of Merit, Film Production of the Year. I got it all. Which is great, you know, because I really dug into it. But I was also what's called a Marion Knott Scholar. And during that time, you got all kinds of exciting stuff happening to you during that. It's just a very few people get selected and you get all these benefits. And one benefit is the fantastic opportunity to go on a backlot tour of Universal Studios with Robert Zemeckis. How fantastic. At the time he was doing Castaway. He took us all over the place, all the secrets. I was in shock the entire time, you know, because you don't know this, you know, you're in college for it, but you're like, oh, this is real life. And one thing he did, this isn't the real stage we went to, but it's just a simulation. He took us into a stage where they were filming Castaway at the time. And this is the scene where, you know, the FedEx ship blew up or whatever, he was flying and he's in the water. And there was this tank the size of a gymnasium, if not bigger, full of water. And there was Tom Hanks in the middle of it for hours doing these scenes in the water, freezing to death. It wasn't a stand-in or anything. It was Tom Hanks. And I'll respect him to this day for doing that, because it looked like brutal work in there. You know, he had to pretend drown, all that kind of stuff. So I digress. Arthur Hiller was another benefit where he was a mentorship for a whole semester, watched everything I did, read everything I wrote, gave me feedback. Now, Arthur Hiller, you know, if you're younger, you're not going to know who he is, but he's most famous for The Hospital, for that. But as you can see, he did a ton of movies. He was a director, he was a writer. So he was there for me, and he gave me at the end, he gave me advice. He says, you got to decide what you want to do. Do you want to be an actress, or do you want to be a writer director? You can't do both, because those are big undertakings. You can't be auditioning all the time and then trying to get your feet in as a writer director. But this is the thing. I need you to go home. I need you to think about it and tell me in a week. If you choose to be a writer director, I'm going to help you because I believe in you. I'm going to help see if I can find you an agent, get you some connections, all that kind of stuff. But you got to make that decision. You got to look at your heart and decide what you want to do. Like an idiot, I chose to be an actress. I can say that now, even though that my whole life, I don't really regret it, but that's the path I chose, because that was my lifelong passion. Even though I grew as a film and television in the Chapman program. But here's the lesson I learned: the harsh reality of acting. Who you know gets you in the door, not necessarily your talent. Your talent is just what keeps you there. So I loved acting. I loved the process. I didn't love the business of acting. I didn't love the kiss up. I didn't love the, you know, all the dirty stuff you had to do, the salesmanship. When you'd walk in an audition, there would be you and 150 people that look exactly like you, right? And all you're doing is a cold read. They don't know how talented you are. It was very frustrating for me. I did a lot of theater. I did theater for many years, but the problem is I can't sing, like, at all. So the only way you're going to make money in theater is if you can do musicals. You're not going to do it just with regular plays. So that was pretty much just a hobby. So that didn't work out so well, hence why I'm not at the Academy Awards right now. But I always go back and I think, what if I had chosen that, guys? Where would I be? So that's like if I could ever go back in time at one point and just see what would happen if I made a different decision, that would definitely be it. But there was another thing that happened in college that changed the course of my life: religion. So I'm not a religious person. I never have been, and I probably never will be, but all my friends were. And so it got me thinking. I'm like, what if one of them's right? You know, this could get hairy. And I thought, well, why don't I look into it? And then why don't I do a documentary series about it? I could do a documentary series where I explore each religion, see if one of them gets me, and maybe something will happen. Because, you know, after all, if I don't get the holy water thrown on me, will I go to hell? That's a concern. So, you know, I got to look into that. So little did I know at that time, I'm like that little fish there, right on the verge of the shark's mouth without realizing it. And the hole I was about to dig myself into. The first thing I looked into was the obvious one, the Old Testament. And I found a gem, you guys. If you can ever find this, it's the best. Charlton Heston reads the Old Testament. I cannot tell you how entertaining that was. So I listened to that and, of course, read what he read. So I read it. I was speechless. Every day I would read a little more of the Bible and I would get angrier and angrier and angrier. This God, he's a jerk, right? I was like dumbfounded that this is a thing. And what is his deal with lambs? Why is he killing all these lambs? What is his deal? Was he like traumatized when he created lambs? Right? So, I mean, and then so of course, all my friends, well, I know right now, all my Christian friends are like, but, I know. Read the New Testament, and I will. I'm going to give it a go. But when I was reading, I was like, this is not the all-loving God that I was, kind of thinking about. This kind of like threw me for a loop. And I had to stop before I went on any other religion. I had to stop and think about it for a little bit. And then one day, as I do, not one day, every time I got a chance, I listened to Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, and Zachariah Sitchin was on, and he was talking about the ancient astronaut theory. Now, this isn't new to me because, as was mentioned, I went to UFO conventions like crazy. This particular image was me at a UFO convention that I love because they also had a Halloween party there. So that is me dressed up as a Catholic schoolgirl being abducted by an alien. What's also fun to note is on the right side of my friend, you can see, I love this picture because there's like a head on a stick. You can see it, but it's highly entertaining after the picture was taken. So anyway, so he's talking about his book, The 12th Planet. And he's talking about all the stuff that's kind of hitting me, where some of the stories in the Bible were actually the Sumerian culture wrote about these same stories in the Bible, but they would predated the Bible. I was like, that's kind of interesting. So the ancient astronaut theory, if you don't know what it is, you haven't heard of it, it's where the theory that ancient aliens, advanced civilizations from other planets came to Earth and they helped guide us. They helped us build things. They gave us civilization. They gave us some religion, and hey, they even created the human race, which we'll get into. And this is just kind of some of the staple images of the ancient astronaut theory, where that guy kind of looks like he's wearing an astronaut helmet. This is a very, very old painting. And as you can see at the bottom part of it, you can clearly see it's like little UFOs. So there's so much stuff to delve into. A lot of the stuff I can't get behind because it's ridiculous, but a lot of the stuff makes you question things. The ancient astronaut theory is in all kinds of texts. Like the Hindu text has the Vimana, which is a flying machine. So there's stuff you can find in all religions. The one I concentrated on was the Sumerians. They were the most fascinating to me. The Sumerians, known as the first, big culture. They're the first humans known to, farm, have a judicial system, all that kind of stuff. So it fascinated me, and that's what Zachariah Sitchin concentrated on too. And they had what's called the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are the gods of the Sumerian. There's 12 of them. But also they had these cylinder seals. The Sumerians had cylinder seals which told stories, and they have cuneiform tablets, which now I should clarify, I'm just going to say Sumerians here, but really when I say Sumerians, I'm talking about Sumerians, later Babylonians, Akkadians, all that kind of stuff. I'm mixing them together by just saying Sumerians for this. But they believed, or what Zachariah Sitchin believed, is that they believed that there was 12 planets in the solar system, because they were very advanced with astronomy. And that you can kind of see here in this cylinder seal where they outlined 12 planets. Now, Zachariah Sitchin, which in my research, I still haven't found proof of yet, but he says that the 12th planet is called Nibiru, or Nibiru, depending on how you see it. And that is the planet that the Anunnaki live on, and it orbits our solar system every 3,600 years. And when it does, it creates havoc, of course, because it's a huge planet and it's ripping through our solar system. So there's that. The great thing is they left us a Rosetta Stone. So we were able to pretty accurately, depending on what scholar you talk to, translate the cuneiform tablets. And there's hundreds of thousands of them. They told these amazing stories. I want you to note, because this is going to come back later, see there's a guy in like a flying disc. The Anunnaki are depicted always, not always, but a lot in flying disc or with angel wings, all that kind of stuff. It's going to come important in a little bit. The Anunnaki, which were before the Roman and the Greek mythology, the Anunnaki had 12 gods. Romans, Greeks did, and they all match up. So right here on the left, you see Zeus, right? And that matches up with Enlil of the Sumerian, which was the head god. In the middle, you have Poseidon here, and that matches up with Enki, who was the creator god of the Sumerians. And then, for example, as a female, you have Athena there, but really that's Inanna, the goddess of love for the Sumerians. So just so you know, they kind of all throughout history, it's like, it's not just there, it floats all the way through many years. But the thing that I found most interesting is the fact that the stories in the Bible are, I read the original translations, the stories in the Bible are also found in the Sumerian tablets. We have Adam in the Sumerian tablets. We have the flood story. We have the Tower of Babylon. We have all of those. They're just told a little differently, which we'll get into. And so, but you got to think they predate the Bible. So what's to say that those aren't true versus what's in the Bible? Because as you know, you tell a story, it keeps going on and it keeps changing as it goes along. Somebody changes a little bit of the story and it changes. And plus, when you have different versions of the Bible, I'm not saying that I'm still not saying that the Sumerian version is the correct one and the Old Testament isn't, but you do have, people translating the Bible and kind of like, well, I don't like that in the Bible, so let's change it to this. There's a history of that in the different translations. But the one we're going to focus on is the flood story. Flood story, the human evolution looks a little different. We don't have ape to human. We have ape to, we're going to mix things up and then get to a human. There's two tablets we'll focus on here, the Atrahasis and the Epic of Gilgamesh. They both have the flood story, and they're both very similar. So what happened in this flood story? So there's the Anunnaki, which are the deities, the rulers, and then the Igigi, which are just the rest of them. They're the workers. So they were there. They were mining gold. I mean, they were mining. I shouldn't say gold yet. I get ahead of myself. They were mining, and they were just worked to death. Now, ancient astronauts theorists will say they were mining gold. I have found no evidence it's gold. I know they were mining, but I don't know if it's gold. But it's interesting to note that they were mining in Africa, which was full of gold. And to this day, gold is the standard of everything. Like, why is gold such a big deal, right? Makes you think. So that's just a food for thought. But the Igigi were fed up. They were overworked. They said they just crashed everything and said, we're not doing this anymore. We need help. So they got the help. Enki and Ninhursag, the mother goddess, created the human race, according to the tablets. So what they did is they took the blood and bone of an Anunnaki and they mixed it in clay and created humans. Now, ancient astronaut theorists will say what they really did is they took the DNA of a Neanderthal and the Anunnaki and they created humans. I could do a whole lecture on the translations and what that means or what it doesn't mean if it's true or not, but we're not going to worry about that now. We're just going to focus on the fact that both of those tablets say they created the human race. So they created the workers, and this is an example of statues of those workers. And cancel culture, don't get mad at me, but they were called the black-headed people. I'm not making that up, right? That's what they were called. And they know, and those aren't goggles. The statues really had eyeballs and they were colorful and all that kind of stuff, and they just fell out. So it's not some kind of, people will tell you, oh, those are aliens. No, those are the humans. The ancient astronaut theory will have you think that these are slaves, right? They were created to be slaves. That's not the case at all. My findings show that these workers were given knowledge in exchange for their services in mining. They were given how to do crops, how to raise cattle, a judicial system, all that kind of stuff. They were given all that information in exchange for their mining, so they could have a good life. They could brew beer, make wine. That's what I'm talking about, right? And they just have to mine. So, and that's the Sumerian culture, what I told you about, where they're the first known civilization to have all this stuff. They were given this by the Anunnaki. Here's just another example of humans and an Anunnaki. And you'll note here how small humans are compared to the Anunnaki. They were huge. They were giants. And they probably went up to the kneecaps of the Anunnaki. And so everything was fine. Everything was good. Working, getting knowledge, woo, party. Until the Anunnaki gods were like, wait a minute. It was humans. They were kind of hot. I on, give me some of that. Right? So that's where you have the Nephilim. You'll know this from the Bible. It's also in the tablets. It's where the angels came down, had sex with the human women, and created Nephilim, giants. And you're thinking, well, they didn't have wings. But remember, they did have wings depicted. And I won't get into all the behind the stuff because we don't have time for that. But depicted always in a flying disc or with wings. So just make a note of that before you judge that one. Nephilim, not good. Not good at all. They wreaked havoc. They corrupted humans, Sodom and Gomorrah, all that stuff. Wow, they needed to we need a reset. That's them wreaking havoc again. There's a bunch of depictions of that in tablets. So let's have the Great Flood, right? Whew. Let's get a little restart there. So both stories have the same thing where they made a great flood to kind of make a reset. In the Bible, of course, you have Noah. And the epic of Gilgamesh, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce these names correctly, but Utnapishtim, right? I tried the little like Wikipedia where you press the little button and hear it, and it made it even worse. So I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. And Zizurda, or however you say it, was in the Atrahasis version of it. So this is kind of a little depiction there. So in Noah's version, the Old Testament, it took 2 of every animal on board the ship. And there they all haul them all in there, have a good time. Can you imagine the smell? The Sumerian version was the essence of every creature. Again, we can go on with the translation and what that means, but ancient astronaut theorists think it was the DNA of all the animals that went on this ship. So all that stuff just got my mind blown, right? I would just keep going. So I'm like, I need to find this stuff out for myself. I need to find out if what Zachariah Sitchin said was true. And so I'm going to read the tablets myself. I'm going to get the original translations. I'm going to read them. I'm going to make my own decision. So this is my favorite site in the world, the CDLI site. It has digitations of tablets that you can spend years looking at. And so that's what I did. Went through, started looking at all the tablets. Let's find correlations. I had translations there. Let's look at the translations. Let's see, what it says. And then one day, boom, I stumbled upon this. I was like, the plane, right? I'm like, that's an airplane. I was like, oh, wait, they're sitting there, they're chiseling away. It's probably a bird, So I look a little deeper, look at the details. I'm like, okay. Get a little deeper. I'm like, okay, look at the date, 3350 to 3200 BC. We're getting pretty old there. The other thing, it's administrative tablet. They categorize it as administrative. So it's not a storytelling tablet. It's not a tale. It's not anything. It was meant to mark things down to keep track of stuff. So I went and I looked like, well, what does other stuff look like? So I looked up around the same time frame. Let's look up what a fish looks like. Clearly, that's a fish, right? Looks like a fish. You got a bird. Looks like a bird to me. Other animals, you got a cow, there's a goat, and there's a stolen Disney character, right? Obviously, that's where Disney got their inspiration. I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, right? Is it a plane? And then I looked a little further, and the translation next to it was called Amu. And when you look at it, the name given to the aircraft on the tablet in question by the museum was the Sumerian Mu, or Shamu. Scholars translate this word as sky or heaven. That's how scholars translate it. Zachariah Sitchin translated the word to mean a rocket ship or aircraft of some kind. Now, it's a little, his reasoning isn't the best or whatever, but I still find it very interesting that they have a picture of what looks like an airplane and it translates to sky or heaven. So just food for thought. But anyway, all this stuff was blowing my mind. I got to let everybody know. I got to let everybody know about this. How do I do it? How do I do it? So I was like, okay, I could do a documentary, maybe a blog, lectures. I can go to college, maybe master in Sumerian studies. I don't know, nonfiction book. But the problem was all of those things only reached those people who already knew about it. It wasn't like somebody was going to Google aspirin and then come upon my article on the Sumerian culture, right? So you have to know about it in order to find this stuff. So I'm like, how do I do that? And that's when a friend of mine, Pam, if you're there, thank you for this, was in Barnes and Noble, and she came immediately home and said, okay, I just saw the hottest guy in the world at Barnes and Noble. He was so tall. He was like over the stacks in Barnes and Noble are tall. And he was above that wearing a beanie, blonde guy, just gorgeous in the New Age section. Right? I'm like, ooh, immediately, ding, ding, ding. That made me think, what if that was an Anunnaki in the New Age section of Barnes and Noble? And 7 years later, that is how this book came to be. I thought I can get the word out there with a sci-fi, chick-lit, humorous novel. Everybody will love it. They'll go, what are these Anunnaki? I'm so excited. Let me find out. Not so much. Drama. Drama is what happened. A roller coaster ride is what happened with this book. It started out great, got some great reviews. Publishers Weekly, said blended the humor. It was a great debut. Midwest Book Review said one of the creative fictional discoveries of the year. I was like, yeah, got it. Not so much. So then the bad reviews started coming in. Should have been my first clue here. It says the fact that this book tries to ricochet between wacky and darkly serious makes for a strange, disjointed, and off-putting reading experience. It's hard to go back to enjoying jolly weirdness when something heinous just occurred for the sake of narrative tension or high stakes, and that's 2.5 stars. Immediately, my brain went back to Trailer Park Junkies, cross-genre, no good, right? And then the cancel culture hit me. These are just a few. There's a lot that gave me 1 stars. First one, I used the term gypped. Back in my day, when I'm so old, I'd say, oh, I just got gypped. But that's offensive to gypsies. 1 star. The fact that the 2 main characters went on a fast food binge, because they just, one day out of the month or whatever, they just ate a bunch of fast food and just had fun. I was promoting eating disorders. 1 star. The story of how the human race was created, like I told you, was promoting slavery and covert racism. 1 star. My book was misogynist, that word. I had deep-seated hatred for women in my book. 1 star. And the Anunnaki having sex with human women was promoting cross-species sex. 1 star. Kept happening and happening and happening. I never expected that. But luckily, I won't go through all the awards. I did win quite a few awards that made me feel better, including the Benjamin Franklin Award, which is the biggest one in the independent publishing business. So it's very, it felt a little better, but still, every time those 1 stars, they hurt. They do hurt. Some of the rules I learned. Some rules are made to not be broken. That is if you want to make money. So yeah, you can do a book that gets awards, but you ain't going to make money if you're pissing people off. So, but I did this graphic and I was like, this should be a more accurate representation of what an author makes right here, because it ain't all those $100 bills. It's just chump change is what you make as an author. I will take, if there is any questions you have, I can take those now.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you if, when I'm about halfway through the book, and it is quite fun and irreverent for sure. So I was kind of noticing that a lot of this does follow like the romance kind of genre. Did you read a lot of romance and science fiction to kind of get an idea of what that, sort of the bodice ripping sort of style is like, or, how did that come to be?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the romance genre. I read erotica too, although this book is not erotica. So, but it does have a heavy romance. So I did read that. I do read I love science fiction, but ironically enough, I have never seen Star Wars. So that's an interesting fact. So I haven't seen that. But you have to realize I grew up so poor, we couldn't go to the movies or anything like that. And by the time I got in college, when I tried to watch it, I was like, what is this crap? so it was a time thing. But yeah, I was a fan of both. That's why I wrote it. My voice is very chicklet. So that's why it's kind of incorporates that chicklet comedy, my sense of humor. And so that's why I thought it's a good mix. Let's cross genre. And it was a tough sell.
Well, I'm a big fan of music cross genres, so I don't see why there should be a problem with, as you said, with your original Venn diagram. You can, do the same thing over and over again, or you can try something new. But it's so easy to be a critic, isn't it? You
Mm-hmm.
know, they're, I'm always disturbed when I see, you know, movies and people that they've put their heart and soul into something, and it's just so easy for someone to just kind of grind it into the ground. But I did have one other comment, and when you were showing that picture of the airplane, what appeared to be an airplane from so long ago, I was traveling in Ecuador, and I went to in Cuenca, which is a city in Ecuador. I went to one of their museums, which was filled with all sorts of ancient statuary from their native cultures long ago. And I'm looking at all these really wonderful carved statues, probably about 6 inches high. And all of a sudden, I said to my husband, I said, "Come over here and take a look at this." And there were some statues that looked just like astronauts, so different than everything else. All of the other things, you know, had like the feathers coming out of the head dresses and everything. And this was like, it looked like it had a helmet with, you know, the glass over the front, just like you would see in a modern day astronaut suit. And I said to him, "Doesn't that look just like an astronaut to you?" So that was kind of like, that was a big sort of wow. So that was an interesting moment that I don't know whether there are other examples of that throughout the world, but I did personally see that.
You just look at all the ancient stuff from Mexico and or South America, and you see them in what looks like a spaceship, driving a little spaceship. It looks exactly like a spaceship. I mean, you see that kind of stuff all over. So yeah, it's a rabbit hole for sure that you get into. So I see a couple questions here. I can answer. So Walter asks, what do you think about short reads? I think short reads are fantastic. They're a hard sell on Amazon. I'm not gonna lie. You have to, especially depending on what genre. If you're doing short read erotica, you got the bank, right? But if you're doing some other genres, it's a little hard to sell. You really got to make a name for yourself. And you also need to make sure that you have a lot of short reads. So if you're going to put one or two up, you probably won't hit it until you have a bunch and you start getting people reading and they start reading other ones and stuff like that. And it's about how you price it. So yeah, short reads are definitely good. Wattpad is an excellent place for short reads, and you can make some income with Wattpad. That's a good resource. But then again, depending on your genre, because Wattpad's more, you know, girls and a little bit younger. So, but you can definitely find a space there. So yeah, for sure on short reads. And then Lori asked, so is book 2 not cross genre? Has to be, right. It is, but not as much. So I didn't put in some of the heavier stuff. Like there was a scene where in the first book where the character was attacked. So I didn't put stuff like that in. I kept it lighter. Of course, I'm a better writer book 2. Book 1, you're always just, the first book, it's heavy, you know, but you know, so it's lighter, a lot more comedy in it. It's just a little easier read. It's a faster read. I don't get heavy into the history of stuff. I kind of let that go and just made it subtle. So in that sense, it's a lot different. And I think it is leaps and bounds better than my first book.
I have something here that someone has written. It says, you mentioned gold today. What is the importance of gold, and does that play into your novel?
It's mentioned in my novel, but the importance of gold, it's just kind of interesting to think about in the sense that gold is the standard for everything. And like, why is that? Why is it the biggest form of currency? Why is it like it's the thing that looks pretty? Gold rings, gold everything, gold toilets. So it's just such a big deal in this world. And you think, why, out of everything we have, every mineral, every rock, why is gold the one? So it's just, I find it very interesting, and it's not something I've really delved into that much. I think about it as the fact that, you know, Africa, almost everything you look at, Africa's the center for humans, where the humans came from, and almost every culture, and that's where the gold was. So it's an interesting notion, and I haven't got too much into it, but it's for sure very interesting why it's such a big deal. she also asked, could gold, oh, that's one thing I could point out with gold. So the ancient astronaut theorist, Zachariah Sitchin specifically, said that the reason why the Anunnaki were mining gold was because their atmosphere was like going downhill. There was holes because they did pollution or whatever. Their atmosphere was breaking down, and putting gold in the atmosphere, gold flakes, helped keep out all the radiation and stuff, which is kind of interesting in the fact that you think you put gold on spaceships to keep out radiation nowadays. So gold could be used for that. So that's what the ancient astronaut theorists think, that the Anunnaki were mining gold was for their atmosphere.
Is your book available on Amazon?
Yes, the first book is available on Amazon. Yes, yeah, and any reseller, you can get it from Barnes and Noble, all that kind of stuff.
I want to thank you all for coming tonight. This has been some pretty interesting, unusual topics for us, but I do have to say I have read through half of the book. It's quite a fun read and amusing, and I'm going to definitely finish it. And but I wanted to just say thank you to Anna for coming on in, and all the people who joined us tonight.
All right, so I will try to make this quick for you. So UFOs, I love me some UFOs. They obviously drink wine as well. Oh, I have to tell you a funny story about this. So you see how the aliens are blurred out? I used this image for a Facebook ad, but it wasn't originally blurred out, and it got designated as pornographic and turned off. So then I put the little blurs on, and it was fine. All right, so UFOs. In December of 2017, To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences was born with, believe it or not, Tom DeLonge, the front runner of Blink-182, totally into aliens. He started this academy to help with disclosure. So back in the day when Hillary Clinton had her email leaks, Tom DeLonge and John Podesta, their emails were leaked, and they were talking about UFOs and disclosure. And one of the things they kind of talked about, you should look up these emails, they're very fascinating, is the Tic Tac UFOs. So these are like little, if you haven't seen it, I'm going to play a video here in a second, little Tic Tac shaped UFOs that the military was seeing all over the place. And so I'll just show you the video so you can get an idea of it. Hopefully it plays. Wave your hands if you can't hear it or if it's too loud.
Dude, there's a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing. It's rotating.
All right, so that was footage. The two videos that came out, and it went all over the place because he had people, he knew people in the military, he knew people in the government, and those videos were leaked. And so it went all over the place, and eventually the Pentagon had to release them themselves and say, yes, they are real. So they came out and said, we don't know what it is, but those videos are real. So then stuff started escalating. It says no longer in the shadows. Pentagon's UFO unit will make some findings public. Not man-made on this Earth. Top secret Pentagon UFO task force reportedly expected to reveal some findings. So they kept saying they're going to reveal, they're going to reveal. And just recently we had that American Airlines where the pilot said you saw cylindrical, craft. They couldn't explain it. The FAA said we had nothing there. Government said we had nothing out. So it's still curious. So things are coming out. And interesting enough, the Mars rover, the only reason the new Mars rover Perseverance was up there was to find alien life. Was there microbial life? That's what they're there for. That's why they landed there. So, they even said that, where that's the reason why we're there for it. And so this is how I thought disclosure was going to happen. I thought it was going to be revealed that all these sites around the world, Egypt, all these places were going to be a lot older than we thought they were. And they weren't just 5,000, 6,000 years old, but 12,000 plus years old. An example is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey is at least, they say, 12,000 years old. And it has fantastic inscriptions and pillars, thousands of them, just detailed. And obviously they weren't done by cavemen, advanced civilizations had to have created these things. And it's over 12,000 years old. And Göbekli Tepe was intentionally buried, by the way. So I thought after that was revealed, then Mars would find a little microbe there. He would find little ancient dead microbes on Mars and be like, oh, maybe there was a little bit of life somewhere. And then it would come that either a moon in our solar system or an exoplanet would have life on it. My guess was that Europa, the Jupiter moon, was going to have life. They were going to find life under the ocean there. They're not on the outside of it, but there's the speculated life under the ocean there before we ever got to alien life. But stuff is hitting so fast. The former Israeli space security chief, said extraterrestrial rifts, and Trump knows about it. Former Israel space security chief says aliens exist, humanity not ready. So people are starting to come out, and that's what I'm so excited about, is this June deadline. What's going to come out, and what are we going to learn, and am I finally going to be able to say, neener, neener, boo-boo, I told you so. So that is why I think we're going to have disclosure this year.
I do have to say that when we look up into the skies and we see thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of other stars and planets, it does seem to me a bit illogical to imagine that we are the only living beings in all of that. But I do also remember, was it Stephen Hawking saying, why are we sending out signals telling them where we are? Because they may not necessarily be ET, and they may not be friendly. Because at this point in time, it is really all speculation, and we really don't know. But it will be interesting for sure, and hopefully it won't be too shocking or frightening. It was a very interesting talk, and thank you, Anna, and I hope that everybody else enjoyed it as well. So I think it's going to be
so much
for us.
hosting. Thank you so much. It was an honor.
So thank you. I hope you enjoyed yourself as well.
Yes.
All right, everyone. Good night, and hopefully we'll see you at the poetry night next month. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for hanging out.